We're going to get started. As you know, with me, early bird gets the worm. If you're not early, you're late. So welcome. Oh, looks like Shlomit from San Diego. Shlomit, welcome. But hello, I'm Brett Klicka from co-founder of SpiderFit Kids. And today I'm very thankful and honored to be here with Preston Blackburn. Now, Preston Blackburn is an ACE certified health coach, a group fitness instructor, a youth fitness specialist, and the mother of two 20-something-year-old daughters who are currently taking on the world. Now, for 2 decades, this is 20 years, folks. For 2 decades, her company Pop, Hop, and Rock has been designing and delivering youth fitness programs to rave reviews and big smiles, annually getting thousands of preschool and elementary students moving while also providing professional development to hundreds of educators. Preston knew having fun in big physical play leads to happier kids and better grades. So in January of 2021, she launched the Pivot to Play certification to help others who are passionate about physical activity and getting kids moving. So Preston, we're very excited for you to be here today.
Oh, thank you, Brett. I'm so excited to be here. I'm glad to be working with you too. I've known Brett from afar for a very long time. So it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, great. So with this, just a couple shopkeeping things here with the webinar. We're going to have Q&A, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions. Thank you so much for everyone who sent me questions. I'm going to be addressing as many of those as I can in our time today with Preston. But if questions come up, we're going to have a Q&A at the end. And if your questions don't get answered in our time together today, go ahead and email me, email Preston, contact Preston. And we want to make sure, because this is important, folks. I asked Preston as a favor, if she can come and talk to the SpiderFit tribe and share how she's gotten success with doing something, like I said, we haven't even been able to do as SpiderFit Kids on any sort of consistent basis. And that's bringing our programs to schools, because we know the opportunity within our community lies within schools. And she's going to share that with us. Just a quick note as to how I met Preston. A mutual friend, Shannon Fable, she contacted me really out of the blue and said, "Hey, Brett, I'm working with this Preston Blackburn, and she's working in the kids space. You two just need to meet." Now, at the time, she just said that you were working in the kids space. And I still was excited. I was like, hey, anybody who's out there making a difference to kids, I want to talk to them, because that's what we're trying to do. And we need help. And our initial conversation, Preston, I find out that you're not just working with kids, like you've been able to be a private business and work within the schools. And I think you remember in our conversation, my response when you told me that, I was like, wait, what? Like, this is beyond our conversation here, because that's one of the most common questions that I get emailed is, okay, well, who should I talk to in the schools? How can we get programs in the schools? And anybody here who sent me those emails knows that my response generally is like, well, we haven't really had much success, but in the times that we've had, this is what we've done. So again, thank you, Preston. So let's start with just the general thing. Everyone here, I'm assuming, works with kids. Why did you want to start working with kids, Preston? I mean, what created that?
Well, to be honest, when I started Pop, Hop, and Rock 20 years ago, I had already been a group fitness instructor for 5 years. I had 2 preschool age children at home, and I realized that I liked them better after we'd been to a playground. And I thought, they're happier afterwards. I'm happier afterwards. There's got to be something here. I can apply what I know in group fitness with adults to kids. How hard can that be? It was actually harder than I thought, but So then I just started, boom, that business was born. I started working in their preschool and providing programming for them. Happy kids, gave back to their happy teachers, and they worked.
So right off the bat, so you realized that kids that exercised and being the father of a 7-year-old, even at 7, we're all happier after she's been out moving. I'm happy. We all know that here. So you're starting to work with kids. You said you started your daughter's preschool. Was that sort of was that a volunteer thing? Was that a paid thing? How did that kind of work?
I charged them a whopping $25 an hour. So just about what I was making in group fit, teach a group fitness class. And, they were pretty receptive, I have to say, but they weren't going to pay me a lot of money for it at the time because I didn't have any credibility yet.
Yeah.
And as I tried to get into other schools at that time, 20 years ago, I got a little bit of pushback occasionally from teachers who didn't really understand what I was doing. And they kind of saw it as fluff versus having a really a purpose to helping them help the kids.
Yeah.
So to get around that, I started. The beauty of working in a school is that you're going to have a teacher there with you. So you can take advantage of that and you can kind of have a conversation with them and coax them down towards the path that you want to set them on. And I would say, start talking about things that I saw in the class. Hey, does Susie kind of struggle with sitting still in circle time? And then I would talk to them about why Susie might, and could be core strength. Do you want me to change and adapt my programming so all of these kids that in your class are working on core strength, but we're really working on Susie and what she's doing? Do you want me to give you some information you can give to her parents? Anything that I could do to support that connection between the physical activity and the classroom.
So you made it relevant. I think that's an important piece that everyone needs to write down right now and it doesn't matter if you're talking to a school teacher, it needs to be relevant to their specific needs. If you're talking to a sport coach, it needs to be relevant to their specific needs. And I think in my early days, that's where I missed the mark, just going and saying, hey, we have fitness. Here's fitness. And the teacher's like, well, I teach English.
Right.
Oh, but fitness is good for everybody. And it just didn't quite touch. So I want to rewind just a little bit. And you're going from the preschool, working at your daughter's preschool. What made you say, okay, well, I want to do this to my whole community? What was the impetus behind, okay, now I want to get into all the schools? I mean, what really made you take it from a one-off type of thing to something much bigger?
In the first few years, I started noticing that the kids were getting weaker and weaker. And as a fitness professional, that freaked me out. Yeah. And I thought, if they're going to keep getting weaker and weaker and nobody's doing anything about it, then we're going to have a real problem in a few years. And so I thought, I'm going to hone this business to work on that problem and help schools. That's basically what Pop Hop and Rock does, is we help schools get kids moving. And so that's what I did. The beauty of this kind of a business is that you can make it as big or as small as you want. So, when my children were little, I kept it kind of small. When they were playing sports in high school, I kept it medium so I could still go to their games. And then as soon as they left, I just set it free. Yeah.
So you talk about seeing the problem of kids, they couldn't move the way they were supposed to. And obviously that hit your heart. And everyone here, if you're going to work, and again, these are universal rules. I don't care if you want to work with seniors, you want to work with kids. If you're just working with kids right now, you're thinking you want to go into work with kids, and it's just kind of like, well, this is the way I could supplement my income, a couple $100 a month or something like that. You're in for an uphill battle. And I think you'd agree, Preston. I mean, this is something you got to be in it. It's got to hit you in the heart, because as you can see what Preston's done, she went from just a preschool to being driven by this internal thing that obviously hit a nerve. It's, I don't know how much work you've done with looking at where it connects with your values or things like that, but obviously it connects with your values. Obviously, this was something that had to happen. And that's why you followed through with this. So when you already talked about one of the challenges you had when you started with teachers not necessarily valuing or seeing the relevance of what we're doing. What were some? I'm sure you had tons of challenges, because I've experienced tons of challenges trying to get into schools. I just want to share again what a lot of people don't know is SpiderFit started as primarily angling towards schools. We had somebody on our board who was with schools. That's where we wanted to go. And we just kept hitting roadblocks. And eventually the other side, where we're working with teams and organizations, that took off at a much faster rate. We didn't have as much red tape. So we kind of went in that direction. But what were some of the struggles that you were just like, man, why am I doing this?
Well, definitely. And what's funny is I played sports in high school and college. I'm an athlete. And then I went almost straight from that to being a fitness professional. So what's baked into my DNA is health, fitness, wellness, athletics, sports, athletes, those kind of words. And so I thought everybody thought that was important, and that's not the case. And so when I would go into schools, I'd start talking about that, and I got nothing. And I realized I needed to go in and start talking their language. I need to talk what they needed and what they wanted. And what a teacher wants is they want the children that they're working with to be able to sit still, to behave, to self-regulate, to control their bodies. And that's what getting them moving does. And so I started kind of talking about that first. And I slowly started chipping away at the iceberg. And once I got teachers understanding that, then I could get a little bit closer to things that made more sense to me. I'd start talking about, grip strength or a little bit of body awareness, and they started understanding a little more. And then I'd start chipping away and I'd start talking about eye-hand coordination. And so I'd slowly move where I wanted to go. But I found that if I used the right verbiage, then I could really connect with them. And I also found it was really kind of interesting that when I was using words like sports, athlete, athletics, it kind of drove a wedge into the conversation, whereas there were the athletes and the non-athletes, and it kind of pigeonholed kids and it kind of labeled them. And when you're in a school situation, you want to work with all of the kids. Mm-hmm. So you have to use words that are going to include all of the kids. And talking about an athlete is going to leave a bunch of the kids out. So we changed our verbiage to say things like movement, physical activity, big body play, big physical play, and trying to kind of hone in on using play as the driver rather than more sports specific words and health words.
So and this is, I think you bring up a great point there, Preston. And this is something that I think everyone needs to write down. Make sure when you go in to speak with a school, schools have a language. That's what you're saying. You're saying schools have a language, and their language and our language, even though they're saying roughly the same thing, aren't the same language. So you're saying that you just used words like big body play. That's not necessarily, you're not going to find that word in the NASM or the NSCA or the ACE text.
No.
You're not going to find those. You're not going to find some of these other terms. And so what you're saying is if you're going to approach school, you probably should do some research as to what terms are they using. You probably had to learn to address things like regulations or expectations or curriculum or speak to that. I mean, how did you?
Well, it is a good idea to, if you're gonna look at a school, you have a school that's a target, go ahead on their website and you can see kind of what's driving them. There are schools out there that are driving are more arts based. Yeah. And those teachers are going to have a harder time understanding where you're coming from. If you go to a school that has a curriculum that's play-based, those teachers are going to have a better time understanding where you're coming from, and you'll have easier time breaking in.
Yeah. So you've decided that you're going to, let's say you're a personal trainer, a fitness professional, you're going to work with schools. So now you're going to decide, well, now you got to start contacting schools. You got to come up with your pitch, and you figure out. So Preston, where should you start in regards to, you got public schools, you got charter schools, you got private schools. Because yes, obviously we'd like to get to all of them. And I know that you've been able to work in some capacity with all of them, but where should I start? If I want to have the greatest level of success, where should I start?
I think your smaller independent private schools are going to be the easiest to get into. They have the least red tape. They're most open to help. Because that's what the teachers are going to see it as help. And they're most willing to kind of maneuver around what would be a red tape, basically, in a big public school district. Yeah.
So you're saying private schools, they make the decisions. Right?
Yeah, they're making decisions, not a school board.
Yeah.
So
when you're looking at the public schools, you are looking at more red tape. You're looking at bigger numbers. You get in with a public school. You have access to a ton of kids. And so how do you navigate that? This is a question from one of our Spider Fit tribe. How do you navigate? Let's say you go into a school. Do you have to approach the district and say, hey, how do you navigate that sort of, hey, I'm going to offer this for this school versus the district is like, what are you doing at this one school? It has to be for the also. How do you navigate that difference between district expectations and individual school expectations?
Well, when it comes to individual schools, they're going to set the pace and they're going to say, you have to kind of work within their parameters. When it comes to district-wide, frankly, we don't even try to get into district wide. And if we're going to work with a public school, it's more of through a PTA and an after school program situation, which is definitely much more accessible than doing something district wide. Plus, there's not enough of me or my team to service all the districts that are around our area. I mean, it's just impossible.
Yeah. So you said PTA and the after school.
PTA is a good way to get into the public schools. Yes.
Okay. When you, and this is kind of going with that, what's the, because I got a lot of questions sent to me about who's the contact person, who's the person that, how do you get in with a PTA? How do you even get in front of a PTA?
The website on most schools is going to have a PTA drop down. That's what we do here. And there's a contact person, the head of the PTA, and you just shoot them an email and say, I have this. I would do research first to see if their PTA offers after school programming, because then they're looking for vendors and contractors who provide stuff like what we do. Maybe
so they're looking for it versus you having to go in and just, that's a big, heavy lift.
That's a heavy lift if the PTA doesn't already do it.
Yeah. So go ahead.
It's a good money maker for the PTA. So if the PTA is not doing it, they ought to think about it.
Yeah. Well, so that's something to write down, everybody, too. The PTA is a go-to, because a lot of people say, well, is it the principal? Is it this? And just speak to that a little bit. I mean, do you contact, I mean, where does the principal of a school fit into all of this? Or do you
with the preschools, it's just the director of the preschool. Those are usually small. And our preschools that we work with are usually church-based, which makes them even that much more flexible. Then if you're working for like the smaller elementary schools, the private elementary schools, we work with a Montessori school right now. And I work directly with the director of the school, which is basically the principal, because the school is so small. But we also provide after school programming at two really large private prep schools, pre-K through 12th grade. I'm not going to be able to talk to the principal, the head of the school. So we work with the after school programming director.
Okay.
They're looking for, that's like the PTA. They're looking for people to provide after school programming for their kids.
So it's the PTA, the after school programming director. These are the people that you're going to. Now, there's a question I got sent about space. I mean, is that just something that's kind of wrapped up into the whole thing? They're like, you go and you pitch your program, and they say, well, yeah, we want the program. Do they automatically grant you the space, or then you have to negotiate about, well, how much space do you need and all that? How does that work?
Usually they have an idea in their head of what they know you're doing. So they know that you're going to need a little bit more space than, a bunch of desks in the middle of the room, and that's not going to work. But there definitely have been times that we've gone in. We always say we need to look at your space first before we even start a program. And we go in and we look at it. And if it doesn't work, we'll talk about, is there something we can do that's different from this? Or can we just use this on rainy days and be outside the rest of the time? Or, whatever that is. I had a thought and it's gone. It has to do with that.
Life.
Oh, I know what it is that those guys, they're wrapping up their fee, basically a rental, so to speak, of their space in what you're negotiating with them. For the most part, it's pretty nominal. I mean, we never, ever, ever rent space offsite. Okay. I mean, we only, so for example, we have two tiers of pricing that we do. The first tier is when a school hires us, we go in and we work with all of the children. And that's a set rate per hour. And if we're there for less than an hour, we still charge them that first hour. After that hour, we charge incrementally. And it's not an enormous number, but it's a very consistent number, because these private schools, particularly independent schools, they have really tight budgets. So we try to respect that. The real moneymaker is in those enrichment after school programming, because you're charging the parents, per day per child. Yep. So the more kids you have in the program, the more money you're going to make. Frequently, the schools are, like I said, are going to ask for a cut of that as their rent, or frequently schools are going to have a requirement that one of their staff have to be in the room with you. You've got to pay that person as well. But they're usually pretty nominal, and they're not that much. But the thing is, you're not going to have a program at a school and invite kids from other schools into that program, because that becomes more of a liability for the school that's hosting. So you're only going to be able to access those kids, which means also that that school where you're hosting it is doing all of the marketing for you, because you're not going to have access to those, that information. They have to do it. So you have to, a couple of things can happen. One, you can have your program there and be paid by the school and get the school to understand what you're doing and how much fun it is and how much the children enjoy it. Then they're going to be excited about marketing it for you for after school.
Yeah. Or
you can talk to the school and say, look, I'll give you a bigger cut if you market it really well. That way the school's making more money too.
Yep.
But you need them to be the advocate for you and the marketer for you.
So I just wrote down a question because I have a question. So when you're in the schools, you said, hey, you got to get the school to see how valuable your program, how fun it is. And obviously you need to know what those value points are for an individual school. So it's like some schools, they're going to use certain words for what's valuable to them, whatever. What have you found is the best way to, like you said, you got to show the school how valuable it is, how fun it is. Is that just sort of something that happens, or do you have sort of a strategy? Are you sending them pictures, or have you made that into a strategy, or is that just something that kind of happens as a side effect of the program?
It tends to happen organically as a side effect of the program, just by having, like I said, you always have a teacher, almost always have a teacher in the room with you. So you kind of leverage that. And every time we've been able to do that and have these side conversations, it's just built our credibility and our expertise. And when I first started doing that, I was just worried about Susie not being able to sit still in circle time. But it ended up that as I started doing that, word got around. We started getting invited to do professional development for schools. They would call us and say, please come teach our teachers why this is so important. Then we started getting invitations to do conferences and state conferences, then national conferences. So it just kind of blew up when I didn't really expect it to do that. But that, I love it. That's, it's getting the message out there. It's getting the important part out there.
It's a testament to how, anytime that happens, it's a testament to how effective and how impactful the program is. So you said, I want to rewind just a little bit, because you said that you contact the PTAs, and which I've done that many times. And and again, this is before I really realized the importance of the school as a different language. And if someone were to get excited from this call and say, wow, Preston's really got me going, and then they were going to contact a PTA, what are some things that they should say? What are some things that say to say, hey, my name's Brett and I work with kids and I'd like to do an after school program? Or there's some better ways to put that?
And the way we have always done it, and I do feel bad because right now we don't even market anymore. We don't have to, which is, we're in a great place. But when we do, we just talk about that big body play. We're getting your kids active. We're getting your kids moving. And frankly, after a year of virtual school, I think more and more parents are like, yeah, let's get them moving. So this is a really good time to kind of tap into that. I'm just getting your kids moving. We are having so much fun. They are going to be sweaty and red-faced. I can guarantee it at the end of each time they're with me. And we don't have kids sit out, really, they don't do it because what we're doing is so much fun. Yeah. And that's how we pitch it.
Yeah. So you're pitching the fun, you're pitching that they're going to be moving. And what's interesting about that, Preston, is, and I think back to even how this is, 5, 6 years ago when we were really trying to get into schools, we're pitching it. And we would come in with all these big words because we thought we were showing up as like, we're going to show them how smart we are. And, now that I think about it, it's like, well, yeah, if I'm talking to a PTA, they're gonna be like, well, this is some scientist that's coming in to do experiments. Someone is gonna come in and have fun. So how important is it? Because I know there's some people that are just getting going in the kids space, and anytime you start a business, it's expensive, and you got to consider how many assets do you need to really make yourself relevant. How important, when you're talking to these schools, how important is having your social media that matches your business name or whatever you're doing? How important is to have a website that shows what you're doing? Are those things they really check? Or, how important is that? Is that an important thing? Would you say, yeah, that should be something that you want to look at early on in your attempts?
No, you don't need to worry about it. Schools aren't really going to look at it. We have a website that has evolved and is constantly changing to meet what we think are the needs. the main purpose of our website is for people to, for our after school programming to enroll.
Okay.
So, and you don't have to do it that way. When we started, we took checks.
Yeah. Yeah.
We collected checks.
Well, and that's what I think a lot of people, when they start, they get so wrapped up in, I mean, I know people that are just starting a business. We spent too much money on things right out of the gate. You're going to make and it's going to be, you're going to end up kind of blowing a lot of money. So it's interesting you say that, though. I mean, it's probably something you want to make sure that it becomes as soon as you do have some income, you probably have there, but
Venmo works fine.
Yeah.
I've had problems when our website is shut down. I'm like, just Venmo me, just shoot it over Venmo. We're fine.
So real quick, Preston, we just had a comment. So I was a teacher in a school with Preston for years, and the impact she has on kids is incredible. So that's that's a feather in your cap.
I know the teacher.
Yeah. So some questions when you're pitching a school, and this is the most difficult part for most people, I think, is just that first step, like getting in. They already got PE. And their PE coach is just eyeballing you. Just, are you coming into my turf, even if it's after school? How do you pitch this to a school that's already got PE?
Well, like I said, we're working with two very large private prep schools right now. And we've been with them for a few years. They have enormous athletic departments. And I think each one of them has 6 PE teachers. So we don't pitch ourselves as a PE program, which is one thing, but we also try to lend as much support to those PE teachers as we can. I know that, and to show it as a compliment to what they're doing more than anything. And we don't try to encroach on their space. We do after school programming only, but we're in a fortunate situation that the athletic director of one of those schools is probably one of our biggest advocates in town and has consistently asked us to come and speak at their school to train the rest of the teachers in the elementary school on why this is so important. So having them as an advocate really helps a ton, and getting them to understand why it's so important and that you're actually supporting them and you're there to support them as much as make a little money on the side.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And it sounds like just, as you go in, obviously you're not encroaching on their territory. You want to educate, you want to come in as very open. We've had this experience where you go in, the PE teacher's already like, and we have to understand that. I think part of it is just understanding that they're going to be protective of what they're just coming in and be like, hey, how can I help you? Just, is there anything I can do to help you? I'm just trying to continue your work. Instead of coming in, and I think as fitness professionals, sometimes we get a certain hubris because, fitness professionals and PE teachers should be friends at the end of the day. And that's where we need to see it. We're not against each other. They have their certifications. We have our certifications. It's all working towards the same thing. So let's say, what can we do together versus, well, don't touch my space. This is my space. Those are my words. These are my types of things. So I think that's a great point. So let's talk about, go ahead.
Well, there was just a comment that popped up that I thought was pretty cool that, and it's a great point, is that most schools only offer PE once a week, which is a travesty, but you can offer us coming in on the backside, and I'm here to do it even more. And parents can pay me to do it. And I'm going to, and it's not a burden on the school because the school will see it as a burden if they have to pay you. And that have their PE.
And to your point, you're adding it in that situation when they only got PE once a week. I know some of the private schools do a little bit better with that. Like you said, they got these big athletic programs, some of them. But if they only got one, it sounds like it's a selling point to say, hey, you only got it once a week. I can come in and help you supplement that.
Right.
So let's talk about pricing for a second. I know one of the things that you talked about in your blog that was important was kind of coming up with the right pricing for schools. And so I got a question sent that they wanted addressed. When you're looking at pricing, do you let the schools, or you kind of say, okay, well, what's your budget? And then you go with that, or do you go in and say, hey, this is what it is?
We have our pricing. We set it. But like I said, I started charging $25 an hour. Yeah. And I slowly raised the rate until I got to the place that I wanted to be. And as I was getting to that spot, I looked around at what other schools were offering. I mean, other programs were offering: soccer, gymnastics, core training or whatever, to see what they were offering. And I just stayed on par with what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because
So
you
go ahead.
don't want to go too far above, because you will lose a client and you will never get them back.
Yeah.
Too pricey.
Well, especially when you're working with an institution like a school, and it's not necessarily that you don't think you're worth it. You come in with some grandiose, well, I'm worth it. I'm worth, $500 an hour. And their response could be, I mean, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
We don't have that. We're a public institution, even a private institution is like, we only got this budget. So
Right.
I think so. That's something that's worth writing down for everybody, is obviously don't sell yourself short, but understand the budget of schools.
And if you do need to raise prices, like we had to raise prices pretty significantly. I can't remember when it was, because we drive everywhere and gas prices had gone through the roof, and we were like, but we gave schools a really long leeway on that. We gave them a big warning. This is going to happen in the fall. And I think I told them in January, this is going to happen in the fall. I'm going to suck it up for the rest of the semester, but we got to make this change. And they were fine. They figured it out.
This is Preston with that. And again, are those always the fun conversations to have, talking about, and you really look forward to that day in January? Oh, I can't wait to get in there and tell them we're going to have to significantly increase the prices. It's not, right? But would you agree that we do this because we want to help kids, but we do need to make a living. Our businesses need to thrive. How important is it that we stay transparent with money and we give them that lead time and we do all those things?
I think it's really important, because they really are. And honestly, private schools are usually more strapped for cash than public schools. If you can get into the public school system, they got money. Private schools don't. And so the more transparent you can be and the more open and honest, and this is why I have to do it, please understand, if you need me to, scale it and do it, bump it up in pieces, I'm happy to do it. But, the more information they have, the better off you are.
Yeah. We just had a situation recently. My daughter has this gymnastics coach that works with her. Best coach she's ever worked with. Like, this guy is like spider fit material. It's amazing. And I selected him, and he wasn't super cheap per se. It was a little more than we were comfortable with. We did that. Unbelievable coach. But then after a training session, it was time for me to pay for the next round. And he did like a 65% price increase and was like, oh yeah, by the way, I forgot to tell you. And I have my checkbook out. And I'm just like, this is not comfortable for anyone involved, because I did it kind of, but you shouldn't make the client feel like that. So I think it's a very important point.
You walked away with such a terrible taste in your mouth.
And I did. And I think that we as personal trainers generally are pretty uncomfortable talking about that money piece. And it's something that we all need to overcome. So when you got these programs going, and you said you're working on all these, you got to hire people to help you. And anybody here that's tried to hire people, I do it. It is one of the most challenging. But then you're trying to hire people, but then you're getting these kind of awkward hours. It's not like, hey, come work with me from 9 to 5 and you're going to get benefits and all this. How do you find the right people that are able to work from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock or whatever your hours are? How do you find those people?
It can be really challenging. I have to admit, though, that one of the hats that I've worn in fitness was a gym manager. And in that role, I also managed group exercise. So filling out that schedule, you got to find somebody to teach that 6 a.m. body pump. It's got to happen. And so I kind of treat it that same way. And with the coaches that I have some who have kids in elementary school. I have some who have kids who are out of college. So between all of us, we kind of seem to make things work. And everybody has a spot where they are happy working. But at the same time, I will also say that for whatever reason in my town, Wednesdays between 9:30 and 11:30 are the number one time that schools want us. And we can't service everybody. It's just not possible. And nor do I want to. I don't want to have 25 coaches at 25 different schools on a Wednesday. What ends up happening is that we've gotten enough street cred, basically, that if we can't service them, they find another day if they want us badly enough. And most of the time they do. Yeah.
So sometimes one thing that sounds like been very successful for you is sort of this word of mouth, this street cred. If you were to think, and I know I'm just kind of dropping this on you here, but if you were to think, we got people tuning in here today who are just like, Preston's awesome. Like, you know, they're commenting on how awesome your program is. If you were to think of some of the things that really have created the value within your programs and made you guys thrive and create this energy and this momentum and this word of mouth, what would you attribute some of that to, even from a programming standpoint? What is getting people so freaking excited about what you're doing?
It's being able to communicate with teachers on those fundamental things that are going to help the teachers get the kids successful, because ultimately teachers want, you know, their success is based on how well the kids are doing. And if the kids aren't doing well, it's really a struggle and everybody's miserable. So if we can help them and support them by getting these kids moving so that they're ready to sit still and listen and attend and pay attention, then the teacher's job is so much easier. And by talking that language with them and speaking to them in those terms, it really resonates with them and they get really excited about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, write that down. Because Preston, this is why, and quite honestly, I mean, so when I coach people on how to create value, it's, you have your program, but then it's like, you know, communicate with the parents, communicate with the coaches, communicate with the teachers. And I just keep pushing that where most of us think the value is. And there is a lot of value, obviously, in your program design and the things you do there. But 90%, it sounds like most of your value comes to how well are you communicating with the decision makers, whether the decision maker is a teacher, whether it's a parent, whether it's a coach. And what a lot of trainers do, fitness professionals do, is they come, they do an awesome program, and then they're out. And the parents get no communication, the teacher gets no communication, the coach doesn't really get any communication. And then it's just like, well, they had fun, but what came out of it?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And the more you can speak their language.
Yes.
And what's going to help them and what's going to support them is really going to, where you're going to drive home your importance and the importance of the program.
Yeah. So after school programs, so even the after school programs, you're communicating with it sounds like the teacher is there. You have to have a teacher there.
You have to have a teacher there.
And so you're communicating
most
to them.
of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. So you're still that teacher there. They understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, all those different things in their language.
Yeah. In their language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So write that down and practice this. Some of these things that we're not good at as trainers, I think the money piece is one of them. The relatability, where we're able to communicate effectively to people that aren't personal trainers, is something we need to work on. And just communicating consistently is something that we need to work on. So everybody make sure you're writing that down, because Preston's dropping bombs here. This is really the business. I love it. I'm so excited. So share with us, what's one of your favorite success stories? I mean, I'm sure you have a million of them, but when you think about it, what's one of your biggest success stories, or one of your favorite stories in all your years doing this?
Yeah, I got to drop two out there. One of them is, we had a little boy a 2-year-old who had 0 core strength. I mean, it was so bad that he couldn't even get up off the floor by himself, which was just heartbreaking. And he wasn't self-conscious, so he would keep trying things. But, if you know anything about a 2-year-old curriculum, most of it takes place on the floor when you're in the classroom. So it was really hard for him. And so the teachers and I we would work together on programming for the whole group. Everybody participated, but it was really designed for him. And we slowly started getting the right information into his parents' hands, because his parents were definitely resistant. And after a while, he ended up with OT and PT. And within 2 years, this little boy was almost on par with his peers, which was big, because making those adjustments and catching it earlier is what really makes the lifelong opportunities for him better. Mm-hmm. That was big, and that was really exciting to see. And the other one happened really most recently was this spring. I had a little boy, a 6-year-old, who had only spent 6 months, I guess, between September and March, when we went into quarantine, in school. He had never really experienced school. And I knew him through a pandemic pod that was being run through a nonprofit, and that nonprofit serviced underserved kids. And his home life was heartbreaking, and he had no self-control, no self-regulation. He was a very physical kid, a lot of ADHD kind of behaviors. And not only would he get frustrated in the games that we played because he couldn't control himself, he would get very physical in the games because he could, and it got to be dangerous. And so we spent all spring working on games that targeted self-regulation and self-control. And it was just so magical towards the end of the semester when we realized that he was taking what we were sharing with him and helping him with into the classroom, so that his pandemic pod teachers were seeing a difference as well in what he was able to do. And it was really exciting. But stuff like that happens all the time. I mean, It's super cool.
So inspiring too. And it's one thing that I think that as fitness professionals working in studios or gyms, we don't necessarily get to interact with those kids, because at the end of the day, I mean, we're servicing in studios and gyms, we're servicing a higher socioeconomic. We're not necessarily truly out in the community. It's more like, well, if you have the resources, come to us, and we do create tremendous impact with those groups. But to be able to reach the kids that really need it, that's one of the cool things you can do in schools. So with COVID, now with COVID, what do you foresee? It's so new. I mean, I'm sure you don't have COVID, this is what you do. Yeah. It's a new. So what are you seeing as how are you seeing being agile? What are some of the things that you think need to be navigated now that COVID's part of the
Yeah, I mean, honestly, last year was pretty much the scariest thing that I had ever experienced, but we adjusted, we adapted, we morphed what we were doing. And we only lost one client last year. It was a school that closed permanently, which was a bummer, but we instantly picked up a school we weren't even looking for. I didn't even expect to take on a school, and it ended up being a pretty significant client. And we continued with all of the rest of our clients all year, which was fantastic. And we found out in the spring that our biggest competitor folded. I had no idea, because I was so in the weeds trying to just keep us alive. And they folded. So now we've got all these people that they were servicing, all these schools that they were servicing, that we're now trying to pick up because the kids still need it. And, as we're starting to look at this year, because we were able to adapt and they weren't, we're pretty ready for this year. I'm not as afraid this year as I was last year. And I think now that kids are going to be back in school and not in this virtual situation, hopefully, of course, those sands keep shifting on a daily basis, but I expect them to be back in schools. We're going to keep doing what we did last year so that we can be with the kids as much as possible. And I think what I'm expecting to possibly happen is that a lot of those people that add those extracurricular type programs like we do might not make it another year if they keep trying to do it virtual. Your music, your art, your dance, your gymnastics, they can't go another year. And a lot of them can't be in a situation in a school because they either can't do it outside, or for music, you can't really sing. Singing's not a good thing. And so I see that there could be another shift in the sands, and that if we keep being nimble, we'll come out, because there's still going to be this need to have kids do extra stuff and to have kids. Yeah. Of course, the most important is moving, but
yeah. So with that agility piece, it sounds like, and it probably wasn't, like you said, is one of the scariest years for your business. I mean, it's not, being agile is not something that's in a comfort zone. But you said that your biggest competitor folded, an entire school folded. And because you were focused on keeping your business, and obviously, again, Preston, I go back to, this is obviously part of your soul. Because my point bringing that up is that if you're just getting into kids, again, if you're getting into working with kids, it's like, oh, well, saving a couple $100 extra a month, you're going to fold too, because there is going to be some uphill challenges. And this next year or two might require some more agility and some more ability to adapt. So I'm very glad you were able to weather that storm and do all of that. So with this, as of January, like I said in the introduction, as of January, you created the Pivot to Play certification. So what was your idea behind that? Why would you want to? Obviously, you've got this successful thing going. Why do you want to share it? Why don't you just keep it to yourself, and then you can just have this big thriving business and you can buy a Ferrari someday? Why do you want to share it? Well,
that's what I want, is a Ferrari.
But why are you sharing this? Why are you putting this out there? Why do you want to help other coaches do this?
Well, when I was just a fitness professional, I was humping for every class and every client I could get. And I was always at the mercy of what a gym was going to pay me for it and what the cut was going to be. And I got frustrated because I would look at my calendar and there would be a lot of white space in the middle of the day. And was hard to nail down a client or a class at that time. But then when I looked at what the schools were doing, they needed me in that white space. And I could make more money on my terms than what a gym was going to pay me. And so it made sense. And so I was like, why can't other people do this? And frankly, the bottom line is I'm so passionate about getting kids moving that if we get lots of us talking about this, we're going to change the conversation in our culture about the value of play and how children develop and what it's going to do for them. And, the more people in that tribe talking about it, the better off everybody is. So bring it on.
Well, absolutely. And that's the way we've seen it. And you're so true. And with SpiderFit is working with as many organizations as we can, bringing as many people in the fold as we can, because we're in this space where you can't do it all on your own. And it's so diverse too. There's schools, there's sports organizations, there's community organizations, there's all these different things. And so if we really do want to, I call it the mall mentality. I think we talked about that before. I mean, yeah, we could have stores all over town where the average person who needs what we have has to go here and go there and look for this here and look for that there. Or we just say, hey, yeah, we all have our own businesses, but we're going to come together and it's good for everyone involved. It's good for us as a business. It's good for the people who need it. It's just all around a good thing. So with that, so you realized that this is something important. Tell us a little bit about Pivot to Play and what is it? How's it benefit? If I just am getting into working with kids, I want to work with schools, what's it going to do for me?
So the way the certification is designed, it's 2 levels, and those 2 levels really are built on our backbone of 18 strengths and skills that we see consistently as being the most common deficiencies that children have. And in the 2 levels, we take a deep dive into what those strengths and skills are, and we connect them directly to the classroom success and in teacher words, in language that schools understand, so that people can build a business based on that. We then take a really hard look at how those strengths and skills are interwoven and interdependent. And we have our Pivot to Play learning pyramid, which just really helps prove that point of the interdependence and how they build on each other. And then once somebody has gotten through all the levels, the 2 levels, they can gain access to our vault of games and lesson plans that gives them a license to build a business using those lesson plans and games. And the thing about those games and lesson plans is that we know that they work because we've already done it with thousands of kids. We know that they're super fun because I've had coaches replicate them over and over. And those games are built off of our strengths and skills system that show and pinpoint exactly what each game does for a child, so that that connection can again be made to a school, so that a teacher can understand that this is really helping them help their kids. We know it all works, and because we've been delivering it over and over again, but we know that in all that fun that kids are having, there's a whole bunch of essential skill development because of that strengths and skills system that proves it.
You say just in talking about, oh, well, we share the skills and the teacher language. If you're out there and you've tried to go from our certifications as a fitness professional, the ACE, the NASM and SCA, ACSM, all these different certifications, and you show up to a school and you try to use that, we know it's not going to work. So then unless you got a teacher in your family, unless you're best friends with a teacher that's willing to sit down with you and go through all of your lesson plan, everything you got, if they're willing to go through, if they're willing to do this and sit down and say, break down, this, you're looking at hours and hours and hours and hours. What you're saying, Preston, is you just got it like right here. It's like, this isn't just another personal trainer manual. This is like, hey, listen, this is how you got to talk. This is the way you got to do this. This is it. Just fast forward. It sounds, and I've looked, by the way, looking at this program, you got it laid out so beautifully, and it's like easy to use. That's the first thing I always look at, because we got our certification, and I know how hard that was to lay that out in a way that makes sense. But understand, I just want everybody to understand, how much of a fast forward that is. If you're looking to work with kids and you're gonna work with schools, and you got somebody who's just like, oh yeah, we'll just read off of this and you can show up with this vocabulary, that's a major fast forward.
Yeah, we wanted to take the guesswork out. Will this work? How do we say it? What do we do? Here's how you do it, and it will work.
Well, and then the programming. Okay, so and I don't need to we know we're all fitness professionals. We know how challenging programming is. But again, if you're just getting into this space, I tell this story with SpiderFit all the time. One of our first things we showed up to, we had this theoretical stuff. I'd worked with kids for a long time, but not necessarily in the school space. And we showed up with all this great theoretical stuff. And we showed up, and it was first graders. And as we were walking down the field, they said, oh yeah, by the way, you know that they don't speak English. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, for one, I realized that this programming, even if they did speak English, wasn't good for the school setting. It just didn't work. And then we had to figure, it just was, and then we had to go back to the drawing board, and it was hours of this and hours of that and doing this. And this is not even to mention figuring out how to talk to schools. I'm not talking like hours in a day. I'm talking hours over the course of a year or two to kind of get something. And that's where we just like beat our heads against the wall. We're like, hey, this is too much for us. You got it right there in this pivot to play certification. So to me, it just sounds like if you're a trainer that wants to work into schools, this is literally a no-brainer. Everyone who's here is going to get an email kind of with a synopsis of everything we talked about today. I'm going to give you a link. Make sure to check out the Pivot to Play certification and do it. This is going to be something that is going to save you thousands of dollars. It's going to save you hours and hours of your time. Folks, I would not have Preston here today if I personally didn't value what she was saying. I'm sitting here writing down what she's saying because I want to have this knowledge too. So anything else as a synopsis, any final words that you want to say in regards to anyone who wants to start working with schools, on anything we talked about today, any final words on that?
Thank you, Brett, for having me. That's the most important. And I'm so excited to be able to share all this with your tribe. Working with kids, to me, has been one of the most magical things I've ever done. And watching them evolve and you know what? Watching them have fun has been spectacular. And it's, every day I leave my job and, schlep a bunch of equipment over my shoulder and throw it into the back of my car. And I think I've got the greatest job in the entire world. It's fun all the time. Honestly, even in the bad times, it's still fun.
Yeah. When you look at the option, you look at the alternative to what's, and everyone hopefully finds a career path they enjoy, but we all work differently. And I know that doing what I do every day, I wake up, I'm like, this is sweet. And I know that some people aren't like that. And so it's such a blessing to be able to do that. And thank you for being such a part of the SpiderFit tribe that's going out there and making a difference with your business. Thank you for coming here and sharing this with us today. We're going to do a Q&A here in a second, but if you could go ahead and share all of your social media handles, I'm going to put those right here as you share, if you can, I'm going to put those into the chat as you go. So let's see, IG, what's your Instagram?
Instagram is Pop Hop and Rock or Pivot to Play. I do both of them. Facebook is Pop Hop and Rock. And LinkedIn is Preston Blackburn.
Okay, let's see. I'm putting those in here for you right now. So everybody, and we're going to do a Q&A in just a second, but I want to make sure everybody has this. Go ahead and just copy and paste this, folks, and then go ahead and like her stuff as we speak, because then you won't forget to do it. So I'm going to go to linked is going to be, and right now, as soon as you copy those, I already got a question here. Let's go and start putting your questions either into the Q&A panel, or you can just put it into the, put it right here into the comments section, if that works for you. I got one hold on. I got one question here. How about before school programs, Preston? Have you worked with that at all?
Yes, we have. And they have been a lot of fun. I think they have a lot of value because if you're getting those kids' brains primed, if you can get to them early, I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah. Nice. Anybody else, go ahead and put those questions here. You shared so much good stuff. I mean, like I said, I was taking notes here. With the, go ahead and any other questions, folks? Let's see. How often, great question. How often should you communicate with the parents or teachers and schools? Is it a formal thing or is it a sort of a formative, like kind of daily, or how does that work?
It's interesting when it comes to after school programming. Once kids enroll with us, we do capture, email addresses and contact information. And it would, in a great world, it would be wonderful to be able to send out this vast knowledge that we have to parents. But what I find is they don't really read anything.
Yeah.
So I get more traction when we're talking to the schools and the teachers, and try to get our information in with their packages.
Well, that's what, I know that when I get something from my daughter's school, I learned the hard way that I have to read it.
Yeah.
She goes to school. It's like Red Friday, and she goes to school, normal stuff on, only kid not wearing red or whatever it is. And like, okay, I'm going to read what I get from the teacher. So it sounds like, right.
Good way to take it in.
Yeah. Right from the teacher. It sounds like that's the best type of thing. And it probably sounds like that probably happens pretty often too, because you're communicating with the teacher kind of every day, right? Every day
we're having a conversation with the teachers.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'll look here. All right, folks. So look for that email, check your spam. I'm leaving this call. I might grab something to eat real quick, but I will be sending this email out. Make sure, again, fast forward your progress in making impact in your community. Just take action. We look at, a lot of the times we look at something, well, maybe I'll do that in the fall. Fall's here, folks. This is so timely, Preston, because school is right around I know that some schools and my nieces start August 10th in Chicago. My daughter doesn't start till later on, but it's right around the corner, folks. So here's your opportunity. I think that we're gonna be in this interesting time as schools go back. Teachers are going to be looking for more and more opportunities to get, because we're playing from behind now. We just had a year and a half where kids have been extra inactive. So take the opportunity, folks. Take the opportunity, make that difference in kids' lives. And Preston Blackburn is someone here that's making that happen. And thank you everyone else here too for making that happen. So again, thank you, Preston. Everybody get out there, create opportunity, create that future of happy, healthy, active kids. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett.